So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this, which is going to be the launch of a new digital guide. And so I'm Dr. Catherine Charlwood, and I'm the Stakeholder Engagement and Impact Manager for DENPRU Exeter. So let's start off with what is DENPRU Exeter, since this is our first webinar. So this policy research unit in dementia and neurodegeneration is part of the NIHR, and it's hosted by the University of Exeter in collaboration with the University of Bradford, LSE, Newcastle University, and UNSW. We're known as DENPRU Exeter because that's quite a lot to say. And we're one of two new policy research units in the area of dementia and neurodegeneration. As you can see, we have a good geographical spread, and we also have a good spread across different conditions. So we work across dementia of all types, Parkinson's disease, motor neuron disease, Huntington's disease, and some other rare neurodegenerative conditions. We work to benefit everybody living with these conditions and all those who support them, which of course includes the many health and social care professionals and third sector workers. I know we have many of those represented today, but crucially those unpaid carers, and we're going to hear from some of those today. So policy research units, we're in dementia and neurodegeneration, but of course they exist in other areas as well, and I do encourage you to seek them out. They're made up of experts and researchers to undertake policy research with the idea of providing that evidence to help support national policy making in England. Okay, so all of our evidence, all of our findings are fed back to the Department of Health and Social Care. What are we in for? Well, Rachel Litherland, who is our PPIE lead, is going to facilitate a guided conversation with members of our co-production group about their experience of creating this guide. And then we're going to come to you for some audience Q&A, and we'll do a few sort of final comments, and I'm going to announce our next webinar in case you enjoy this so much you want to come back again. So just before I hand over to Rachel, a little bit of context about this project. So we were very fortunate to be able to leverage a bit of extra funding from the University of Exeter through their Public Engagement with Research Fund to run this brief co-production project in the first sort of 6 months of this year. Now, with DENPRU Exeter, we're doing something we've never done before. We've done PPIE, or as we like to call it, involvement work before, but it's tended to be condition specific. So, you know, maybe people with dementia are quite used to speaking to other people with dementia or other carers of people with dementia, and the same with Parkinson's disease and Huntington's disease, but nobody has really thought to have these conditions speak to each other before. And so because we know we're doing this throughout all of our policy research work within the policy research unit, we wanted to run a specific project to kind of get to the detail of how are we going to do this? What are we going to need to think about? What kind of difficulties might crop up? So what we did was to form a co-production group of 10 different experts by experience, covering between them 4 different conditions. And we held some online workshops and had an awful lot of chatter and discussion in between. And it's been completely marvelous. So yes, we will give you the link to the guide after they've spoken, but I don't want to take any attention away from our most VVIPs. I'm going to stop sharing, and Rachel, it's over to you.
Thank you, Kathy. So I'm here behind the scenes, really supporting some members of this co-production group. And as Kathy has said, this was 10 people living with different conditions or caring for somebody with different conditions, drawn from our wider involvement network for DENPRU Exeter. So our wider involvement network, we've been doing some great work recently and kind of naming it and forming an identity, and that network is called the FRIEND Network. It stands for Research Involvement Experts in Neurodegeneration. It took us weeks and weeks and weeks to come up with a name that represented us. And so that involvement network for DENPRU Exeter is about 40 people. It's really important for us that we have people with lived experience at the heart of DENPRU Exeter. But as Kathy has said, it was really important for us to work out how we work together. How do we work across conditions? What do we have in common? What are our differences? What are the kind of approaches and techniques and methods that we could use to make this work really, really well, because that's very important for us as STEM Exeter, but also for people to have a good time and for it to feel a really positive experience. So we have a few members of the network here today. I'm finding it tricky now to spot everyone because of all the pictures. So I think if you want to introduce yourself, anybody, do you think you could? I don't know if you can pop a hand up, and if you're happy to. So Sue, go for it.
Hi, I'm Sue Nelms. I live with my husband, Rick Nelms, who's further down my screen, but I don't know where he is on yours. And he has motor neuron disease. I'm his full-time carer. We got involved because actually we think it's really important that people who are doing research have the opportunity to connect with those of us who've got lived experience, because if you haven't been in that situation, there is absolutely no reason why you should understand the things that we have to go through.
Thank you, Sue. So we'll come back to more of that discussion in a moment. Thank you, Sue. Alison, thank you.
Hi, I'm Alison. I live in Dundonald, which is in Northern Ireland, and was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2017.
Thank you, Alison. Rick.
Yes, I'm Rick, the aforementioned husband of Sue. I have a long, slow motor neuron disease called primary lateral sclerosis, and I was diagnosed in 2017. And it's turned my life upside down, but I'm very glad to be here, bringing a perspective of what it's like living with motor neuron disease, and also painting. I'm a biologist, but I'm now perhaps better known as an artist.
Well, hopefully we can bring that point into our discussion, Rick, later. Thank you, Rick. I can see Jackie's hand. Oh, Jackie, you're on mute. Sorry, there has to be one. Let's let Jackie find her button. Sam, do both of you both then?
I'm unmuted.
Hello, I'm Sam. My dad had Huntington's, my sister had Huntington's, and I got diagnosed too, but I'm not symptomatic.
Thank you so much, Sam. And Jackie, well done.
Yeah, sorry, that was a banging episode. I'm Jackie, Huntington's family also. I cared for my brother until his death in 2019. He was just 47, and was 12 when I lost my mother from Huntington's, and also lost an uncle and a grandfather. So kind of, I don't know, lifetime, I guess, experience of Huntington's disease, caring for it, and the challenges that brings.
Thank you, Jackie. Anybody else from the group? Got anybody? Oh, Becky.
Hi. Yeah, my great-grandmother died of Huntington's. My grandfather, my dad died in May 2020, and my brother currently has been diagnosed. I tested negative a couple of summers ago. My brother's lost mental capacity. He's quite far along at age 44. It's quite difficult. Yeah, he's particularly showing quite a lot of quite extreme symptoms.
Thank you, Becky. Anybody else from the What Works gang? I'm going to come to the first question then, if that's okay. So we're gonna.
Sorry, Rachel. Rick had his hand up there.
Oh gosh, sorry, Rick. Go for it.
Thank you, Alison. I forgot to say, my mother died last year, having first shown symptoms of Alzheimer's disease about 30 years ago. So one of my recent paintings, is called Long Grief, and it's really about that experience.
Thank you for making that point, Rick, actually, because what we found as we were working together was that although people were bringing their own experience, their own condition that they were representing to some extent, that actually a lot of people had lots of experience in their lives or in their families of some of the other conditions that we were working with. Julia.
Well, I'm an ex-carer of my mother and a current care of my husband who has a cognitive impairment, not quite dementia. I just want to say that I have been I've been involved with dementia research for a long time, but this is so exciting, working with other conditions and learning about and finding out about what works for some people and what doesn't and so on. I'm really excited about the whole idea of looking at these conditions together. I'm sure it'll be very fruitful.
Thank you. Thanks, Julia. So let's kick off with our discussion then. So Sue, you started to say this, but for all of us, why did you get involved with Dempro Exeter, but particularly this mini project that we've been running, where we were trying to work out how on earth to do this? What motivated you to get involved? Any takers? Sue, thank you.
Yes, I can sort of expand a little bit on sort of where we came from. For me, it's the fact that people don't actually understand what it's like. We have, I think, this perception of what it's like to live with something like dementia, when in fact we can be pretty wide of the mark because it's such a wide spectrum. And the same happens with motor neuron disease, because the different types of motor neuron disease affect people in different ways. And I think it's really important to have the conversations so that we can share our experiences, which may or may not work for people going through other, conditions and experiences. But it's important that we actually hear about them. And, I've heard researchers saying, well, we want to do this for these people and it'll make their lives better, but actually it probably won't, because you're not understanding what they are going through. And it would just be great to open people's eyes to some of the things that can be done and some of the things that can't be done. So I mean, that's the reason I'm here. And a lot of people certainly with motor neuron disease don't have advocates or somebody who's gobby enough to talk for them. I'm gobby, so here I am.
Thank you, Sue. Well, your husband might say something similar or different now. Let's hear Rick.
Yeah, I became involved for many of the same reasons that Sue mentioned, but also because I'm conscious that in some of the conditions we are making progress towards real medications that really change people's lives. And for example, a very specific example, there are two genetic forms of motor neuron disease which fundamentally work the same way as Huntington's disease. And in both of the motor neuron diseases, we have medications that are actually slowing or stopping the progress of the condition. And it became very important to me that we had the opportunity to work together, because I thought that the same kind of approach was just as appropriate in Huntington's disease, because the underlying mechanism is so very similar. And I thought that having had the experience of seeing those medications developed, it was really important for people like me to sit down and say that here we are, and we are going places together. And I think it's really important that people understand, scientists, researchers, clinicians, understand that there are differences, but there are commonalities between our conditions, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Rick. Alison, why did you get involved?
Yeah, very similar to what Rick had said, particularly at the end there, you know, to try and to stimulate a debate sort of within research that, you know, that not everybody is the same, you know, that one person with dementia is different from somebody else, and somebody with dementia today be different than they are tomorrow. But it's just so exciting to get to know a bit more about other conditions. And as Sue said, you know, you sort of, you think you possibly know about it, but you really haven't got a clue, you know, but you're making assumptions. And that's something that frustrates me greatly when it comes to dementia, that people assume they know what I need or want. And I'm sure I would be guilty of that with other conditions, you know, so it's a real eye-opener, and it's just been a fantastic thing to be involved in. And I really look forward to seeing where we can go with it.
Thank you, Alison. It's reminding me of quite early on when actually everybody in this mini project was kind of saying it's okay to be nosy. We don't know a lot about each other's questions, and it's okay to ask questions and to find that out. And that might feel a bit awkward. It might feel like you're being nosy, but actually we had given permission in the group to be nosy. So I'm going to come to the second question about what you have learned by being part of this What Works project. You know, we met for, I think, only 4 meetings. We did an awful lot of work additional to all of our other work for DEMPRO Exeter. We created, co-created a guide together about how to do this. What did you learn through this process? Jackie?
I'll answer the 2 questions. It kind of validates you to some degree, in that you've got something valid to contribute to a debate. I was in hospital with Mark, and he was very, very poorly towards the end of his life, and was told by a nurse that I was just a carer and should basically shut up, which was hurtful and upsetting, etc. And I think you become isolated with the disease and isolated as a carer within this domestic environment, and you deal with occupational therapists, physiotherapists, speech therapists, etc. A long list of people coming in, doing stuff, going away, and you're just a carer, or you're just the person with the disease. And so I think to join it gives you that space to validate that you have got something to contribute. And then with the second thing, it is learning about these similarities and differences. I think brain diseases on the whole, even with the field of cancer, brain cancer is not the kind of, for want of a sort of trite term, a poster cancer. Do you know what I mean? Breast cancer, we're all running about in pink and having not a jolly good time, but you've got that massive high profile, whereas brain cancer, it's a bit messier, it's a bit more difficult. And so it's those similarities. And I think particularly with Huntington's, for the nice thing, there still isn't a nice pathway, is there, for Huntington's? So it's kind of, well, motor neurone covers it, or Parkinson's covered it, and everybody in the Huntington's community is like, no, it doesn't, because it's got a bit of all those things. So it's drawing these threads together and taking those similarities and finding out what other people are doing well, and taking that to your own area of disease. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, Jackie. And I think, I think there were lots of those moments when across conditions where people were saying, oh, I thought that was just, I remember somebody saying, I thought that was just what happened in Huntington's disease, but actually we're talking about that in relation to people with dementia, and you're saying something very similar. And then, of course, all of those differences. And, I know the Huntington's disease community, there's a really strong, it feels really important to have that pathway with the nice clinical guidance, which doesn't exist. Anybody else want to say about what you've learned by being part of this group, this process of making our guide together? Julia.
Well, I've been involved with research and personal experience of dementia for a long time now. It must be 18 years or something like that. And when I started doing that, it was I wanted to know, and I wanted other people to know, and I wanted something to be done about it. And now I have learned that there are so many other things that I feel exactly the same about. What I think I learned from this group, which was some of the differences in the presentation of all these conditions, and how this difference in presentation, particularly any physical aspects of the conditions that I knew less about, is so important in terms of how people can participate. And it just makes it, I mean, dementia was a sort of unseen thing, and now it's more seen, but at the same time, sometimes it's not so, it doesn't present itself in such an obvious way. And so I'm actually feeling that these conditions that have been neglected, they're probably difficult to deal with, I mean, from carers and people, but also more difficult perhaps with researchers, I don't know. What I've learned that some of them, particularly Huntington's, appears to have been just left out. So I've sort of learned something about the priorities, and the fact that they should all have equal priority.
Thank you, Julia. Sam?
I think it's very similar. A lot of what Julia just said really resonated. I think a lot of people with Huntington's feel a little bit more isolated because it's a genetic illness. So it's not something that everybody can get. I think doing this group for me has made me feel a bit more included. And also knowing how similar the illnesses are. I was not aware of that at all. So that's, but I think it's sometimes you can feel very alone, I think, with Huntington's. I think because it's like I said, tell people about it, they haven't got a clue. Even doctors, the GP, they haven't got a clue. So it's been very difficult. But when you're in a group like this and you feel a bit more included and you feel like you can sort of say how you feel and you've got people that understand. So that's been really good.
Thank you, Sam. It's making me remember, when people can go and look at the guide after the webinar has finished, it's making me remember some really deep discussions that we had about as a group about some of the differences, I guess, because of conditions. So Sam, you just talked about the genetic component of Huntington's disease, and we had very philosophical, very deep discussions around ideas of anonymity and publicity and the impact of talking about your experiences in a group such as this, whilst actually not revealing too much about perhaps your family's situation because of the genetic component, particularly of Huntington's disease, although it does apply a lot across all conditions, of course. But I think we got really far in our thinking about the importance of anonymity sometimes, and not revealing all of ourselves to the world, and you will be able to read some of that in the guide, where that has come out in our discussions. Anybody else want to say anything about what you learned through the process? I'm happy to move on. Oh, Sam, Becky, sorry, Becky.
No, I just thought it was really wonderful that we were sort of made to think about making it inclusive and any issues that people may have that to make it difficult for them to take part. I thought that was really good. I learned a lot from that.
Yeah, so little teasers. There were some things about if we have cameras on or off. And actually, sometimes people might want their camera off, like some of us have today, but that can be difficult for other people who need the kind of cognitive cues, the memory cues to kind of tune in and work out where this voice is coming from. But other people may feel a bit awkward or emotional and not want to show their face on screen. We had some kind of things to iron out around the use of the chat box. Again, we're using the chat box today, but sometimes that can be tricky for people who can't keep up with the chat box as well as the discussions. We have our pens and our yellow cards. Alison, can you put your yellow card up just to show it? I can't find one. To show us, yeah. So, you know, the kind of the cues, the things that help us to talk and participate and be a member, be included, as Sam was saying. Lots of differences actually between conditions, but we worked out some solutions, and that was great fun actually, working out how to accept the accommodations and adjustments we might need to make for one condition, whilst those not being to the detriment of people with other conditions. So there's lots of those solutions and good advice in the guide. I'm going to move on to the third question group, which is, what do you think the most important message in our guide is? It's a very positive, colourful, practical guide, but what do you think the most important message is that people could take away from their reading of it? Becky, thank you.
I was just thinking that it makes it feel safe, hopefully, and inclusive, and that people will be confident to take part. And yeah, I just think that came across really well.
Safe is a great word, Becky. And also, just to acknowledge really that we were a new group, that Denpro Exeter was a really new policy research unit. We hadn't done this before, and we had to hit the ground running, and we didn't know each other really. So quite quickly we had to create this, it was important to have this safe space in which we could have quite open and honest discussions. I'm just going to acknowledge something that Jag has written in the chat box, which was, it's a lovely group to be seen and heard and to talk and understand about cultural nuances and inclusivity, especially within marginalised communities. And again, we talked a lot about that in our group. So I'm going to go Alison and then Julia. Alison first.
Yeah, I think the safe space was very important for all of us, and I think that came across because we very quickly respected each other. And I think, given the permission, what you had said earlier, that we could actually ask questions without feeling awkward. It was better to ask somebody than to try and work it out and get it totally wrong. So hopefully anybody looking at the guide will see the importance of, producing safe spaces and people respecting each other and everybody being equal, no matter what the condition was, to be able to share and to have confidence in saying what they wanted to say without feeling, oh, I can't really say that because that might be wrong, that it's okay to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. That's safety again, isn't it? Julia and then Rick.
Well, I think that one of the important messages that came out of the work that has been done was how trust can develop and humour can develop and friendship can develop. And as you say, well, I can't believe we've only had 4 meetings. It seems like I've known all of you for ages now and don't want to lose you. And that's one, I think, of the important messages for public patient involvement, is to make people feel that they're involved with each other, they're a team, they can trust each other, they can say anything. Like Alison said, you can ask questions, doesn't make, genuine curiosity, and we all want to learn and we all want to do something. So I think it's the friendship and the trust and the honesty, and I think that researchers or anyone who's needing and then wanting to involve the public and the patient in something has to join in with that, because it's the people who lead it that create that. because everyone's a person, just to speak the obvious. And if you feel like a person, not just somebody with a condition or somebody who's looking after somebody with a condition or a researcher or whatever else you're going to be, that's an important step. And it says that very clearly, if I remember rightly, in the product.
It does indeed. Thank you, Julia. Rick, and then I think Jag is, I'm not sure if Jag, if you wanted to say something, just pop your microphone off after Rick, but I'm not sure if you do. Rick.
Yeah, one of the things I've learnt is I've spent my life as an academic, and so being in the position of having to say, I can't remember what question it is that I'm answering, and knowing that that's all right, and that somebody will tell me at some stage what question it is that I'm answering, is just one of the, really brilliant things about being part of this process. And that's really important for researchers to know about, that actually, in order to keep people with various different conditions involved, you actually need to provide scaffolding. You have to provide the sort of reinforcement of what's going on, and just remind us every now and again, and don't be shy about doing it. So yeah, thank you.
Rick, that's a great word, scaffolding, and I think that's what this guide is really, is a scaffold to others, to say we've done this way. We didn't know the answers, did we, when we started out at meeting one? We really didn't. We had our own experiences to bring, but we didn't know how to do this together. We could make some good attempts, but I think if we can help other people with the scaffolding that this guide provides, that's a great achievement. Becky.
I was just thinking that I think it's like the common threads across all the conditions, and everyone's experience being different. But even so, those common threads, it like bonds you, doesn't it? You feel a strong connection with one another. I think that's the amazing thing about groups like this.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think, was it Julia, you just talked about trust and relationship and friendship, and somehow we got that very early on in this group and in the wider network as well, but it kind of relied on that. I think that we did have this trust and safety. A lot of you have talked about safety, and that gave us the building blocks on which to do this really practical work together. Okay, does anybody else want to say anything about messages from the guide? I mean, we do hope you'll all go away and read them. It's packed full of messages, practical pointers, loads of messages, loads of solutions. But if nobody wants to say anything else, I'll conclude by asking you what you hope might happen because of this guide. What do you hope happens next? Any takers? Becky, thank you.
Well, I hope that it would help the researchers to get a better understanding, but maybe also help other people, encourage other people to take part and feel safe to do so and confident to do so.
Yeah, there's a lot of yourselves in this guide, isn't there? There's a lot of your quotes, your examples. Yeah, so for that to encourage other people to get involved as you have, that would be great. Sue, and then Alison.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of sort of practical pointers in it. The silly things like, don't make somebody talk for too long. It's, if you look out in the wider world, it's so easy to have meetings that go on for a couple of hours without a break, and that doesn't do us any good. And actually, there's a whole load of people in the outside world, thinking of sort of people with neurodiversities who possibly find it difficult to actually keep going that long. And hopefully this, guide will encourage people to do things slightly differently.
Thank you, Sue. Alison, what do you hope might happen because of this guide?
As I say, I agree with both Becky and Sue there, that people reading it and people, may give others more confidence to come forward and to think, I have something to contribute here. I'm not just a carer, or I'm not just somebody living with this condition, that I have a worth, and I have a lot of experience that if you are prepared to listen to, you will learn from. And I think what Sue said there as well, about working with a group of people that you're working with, and finding ways that adopt, is breaks necessary? Do breaks need? Are some people going to need to go off camera for a bit? For myself, the chat box doesn't work at all, really. I can type into it, but I can't keep up. If I'm typing into that or reading it, I'm losing what's going on. Yeah. But we found a way around that where Kathy or yourself will relate to that, so I don't need to do that. Yes. So it's finding out what works for the group of people you are working with, but more importantly, to get more people involved and to give people back their worth, rather than, as somebody said earlier, they were told they were just a carer. Like, that's shocking. You're much, much more than just a carer or just the person with the condition.
Yeah. Thank you, Alison. That's great. Yeah, the idea of worth is so important. Rick, and then Julia.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is really important about this guide and this process is where we are in time. This is a critical turning point. There's so much understanding developing across all of these conditions about the mechanisms, the cellular mechanisms, the biochemical mechanisms, the supporting cells around the cells that are damaged, and the kind of granules and proteins and things that build up and cause damage. All of those things we are understanding more and more about, and that's actually giving researchers opportunities that didn't exist when I started research 30 years ago. And so actually, I'm hoping that one of the outcomes of this guide is that it will actually encourage more research, and it will encourage more research into the diversity of neurodegenerative conditions. So not only will it get more people involved, but it'll get more researchers involved as part of that, getting more people involved.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Julia.
Yes, I'm going to say, I'm going to say brave. What I would hope to happen is that there will be bravery and courage in the people who are starting to make research, to realize that it can work really well to everyone's advantage. I know there are funding issues, and I know there are problems with gathering people. And I mean, our group, particularly by that being so many of us and sharing it, just one person with experience in a group, you're not going to get this lovely mixture that groups with more than one, with several people in work. So I'm just going to say, be brave. It has worked. It does work. And it's interesting, and to learn by listening and to learn by including. I can't think there can be anything except positive results from being brave enough to do that.
Thank you so much, Julia. Jackie, final comment, I think.
I agree with what everybody said, and it's this almost like the colours on Rick's painting, isn't it? It's this kind of tapestry of sorry, the dog is barking at the opportunity. No, it is this rich tapestry of everybody. Research isn't in a vacuum in a laboratory with a cell and a mouse or a fruit fly or whatever. That research impacts people with that disease for, in our case, generations and generations to come. So it is a tapestry of people that knit together and are stronger. It's this stronger together thing rather than in this vacuum of caring at home alone and isolation and being in a lab and being isolated. I guess if you don't see the cold face of it, what you're doing with those cells is I guess detached. I've not been in that field, but I think it's richer for everybody to kind of work together, and that should make everybody stronger and hopefully influence policy and improve things for everybody as it goes along.
That's perfect, Jackie, and perfect also that Spike managed to introduce himself as the 11th member of the group. So Spike was at our meetings. And also just because you will see this when you go to look at the guidance, but Rick's artwork is very much present in our guide, and Jackie has just referred to the tapestry, and I won't reveal too much because it's in the description of Rick's painting, but Rick created a piece of art that represents this group, and you will see that in the guide. Just thank you, everybody. It's been wonderful working with you. More of the same. We'll carry on, but it's been, you know, really fruitful piece of work that we've done to kickstart our involvement work in Denpru Exeter. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for revealing and sharing so much of yourselves today.
Absolutely. Thank you to you all, and to Rachel for facilitating so beautifully. So I know that people are desperate to see it. So I have now put the link in the chat, and I'm also going to briefly screen share just while people are thinking about their questions, because of course we're going to come to you for your questions. The reason I didn't want to share it while people were talking is because it's so beautiful. It's sort of distracting, and I really wanted us to be able to focus on what the group were saying. So this is Rick's artwork, Heterogeneity, which people were referring to, and I think that's probably my favorite moment was when we revealed that, and everybody, there suddenly seemed to be onions present in a few houses. I'm not sure how that worked. So the guide is a free digital guide, so we're trying to make this available to as many people as possible, and it has kind of very practical things, but also more emotional things. So I'm just going to briefly click into the what works during meetings aspect, partly because so sadly she couldn't make this time, but so we've got our quotations peppered throughout. So Shafak, who lives with Parkinson's disease, was reminding us that people with Parkinson's disease are averse to change, especially last minute changes. So to not alter the schedule, alter the time really close to the meeting. There is a special bit of guidance in here around facilitating meetings. And as Rachel said, you know, I think, Julia, your point about bravery is really apt, because Rachel and I hadn't done this before and didn't quite know that it would work. So yeah, it's a bit of a leap of faith, but hopefully as you go through the guide, you will see you know, there are so many practical points, but also we really wanted to keep people's voices and their experiences present throughout. So I'm going to stop sharing so that you can have a look at it in your own time, but let us open to questions. Right, well, we're going to go to Wayne and then Linda. Here we go.
Yeah, just like to say, yes, I am included. And I'm also quite near to you because I'm in Medway. So we share part of Kent. But yes, I do live alone, support myself alone, do not have particular family contact, nor any, what can you call it, sort of dedicated professional support at the moment. So, yes.
Thank you very much, Wayne. So yes, so Wayne is part of our friend group within Denpru Exeter. Over to our director of Denpru Exeter, Linda Clare.
Yes, as you see, we are very much aware of this question of how people of including people who live alone, and it's an increasing proportion of the population, especially in older age. And I just wanted to add that one of our first policy projects in Exeter that we're working on is about people living alone with dementia, Parkinson's, Huntington's, motor neuron disease, and other conditions. And we know that this has been raised as a policy issue for many years and not much action has happened. So we want to try to change this. And I think there is a groundswell of interest now and acknowledgement that this is something we need to think about, and think about how services might adapt to provide more appropriately and so forth. So I just wanted to reassure you that it's very much on the agenda, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you a bit more.
Fantastic. Thank you, Linda. Yeah, no, it's something that's really, really important to us. And we are, as Linda referred to, we're approaching the really kind of intense stakeholder consultation phase of this project. So we are definitely keen to get involved with everybody. But as Linda said, more and more is being published on this topic. So it does seem like this is finally getting the attention it deserves. Right, I think we've got Rick next.
Yes, really just to say, the experience of being part of this group and also some other groups has really brought home to me, and the experience of a close friend, this issue of living alone, and coping alone and caring for yourself alone. And so the paintings that come after the ones that are in the guide, the ones I'm working on at the moment, are a series called Sometimes. And one of the sometimes, well, in fact, probably more than one of the sometimes paintings is actually in the area of being alone. That aloneness can occur in a variety of ways. My mother has spent perhaps the last few years of her life feeling very, very alone inside her own head. So it's a really important part of people's experience, both in that sense and also in the sense that the original question asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Very important. Any members of the group want to tell us what they think made a difference in terms of feeling like you were involved, you could be part of it? How did we get so close so quickly, gang? Oh, Alison, go for it.
Good facilitation, with yourself and with Rachel. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I think without that, then it does not work. And I think when you've been involved in other projects for a while, you sort of know what works really well and you know what doesn't work. And as I say, just people feeling that they could contribute, that they were respected. And we did spend a bit of time sort of, even though over a relatively short period of time, but within that first sort of meeting, you felt you had got to know the backgrounds of people. And as I say, I think everybody respected everybody else. And you felt that you could say what you needed to say without risk of causing offense, or that people would know you definitely didn't mean to be offensive if you said something that was maybe wrong. But facilitation for me is what makes it work.
Far too flattering, but thank you very much. And actually, like I said, we learned so much about how to facilitate better through this process, which was crucial. Rick?
Actually, yes. I think it was the courage of everybody who was in the group in the very early stages, and courage to reveal about themselves and their own situation, and that courage encourages courage, if that makes sense. So the fact that other people were being brave and bearing their souls or whatever actually helped everybody else to do that. So I think the good facilitation point is well made, but I think it also has a lot to do with the fact that people were really very brave, and it rapidly made me love being part of the group, and it gave something really important to me, so thank you very much for involving me. I've really loved it.
Well, thank you to all of you. I mean, yes, we absolutely couldn't have done it without you. And I think it's very interesting that courage and bravery is coming out so strongly. But I think these are really important things that we don't necessarily tend to associate with research or being involved in research. Now I'm conscious that we're almost at noon, so I'm just going to briefly share the details of the upcoming webinar, but then I'm very happy to stay on and answer questions with anyone who can still stay, but I'm aware that some people are going to have to rush off. So just to make you aware that our next session is on the 6th of November, and we are looking at access to mental health services. Now, this is a topic which actually came up from our knowledge exchange community. So via talking to stakeholders, talking to specialist Parkinson's nurses, speaking to people running services or being frustrated by services, and trying to raise this as an issue of importance to the community. So we've got some really intriguing guest speakers. We've got a specialist Parkinson's nurse. We have got the head of policy from Huntington's Disease Association. And we also have two of our wonderful experts by experience. So hopefully, if you can join us then, that would be marvellous. And we are ever contactable. Our website is now online again. Huzzah, long may it stay such. We are also on Twitter, but now considering also alternative platforms, given what's happening there. And you can always email us at denpru@exeter.ac.uk. But just to say thank you so much for sharing the space with us this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure to share this with you.